Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Cathy Hartt. I am the last director of the Technical College of the Rockies Practical Nursing Program. Um, a little bit about my career and my education. I am by background a certified nurse midwife. I was labor and delivery nurse in Grand Junction for the first 7 or 8 years of my career, and then went back and got my master's in nurse midwifery. I came back and practiced nurse midwifery in Grand Junction and Phoenix, and then came here as the first nurse midwife. Practiced in private practice for a couple of years, and then sold out to the hospital, Montrose Memorial. So brought the nurse midwifery services to Montrose Hospital in the early 90s, and did that until the late 90s. And then I moved around a little bit, was a clinic director for the University of Texas for about 3 years, and continued as a nurse midwife, and then moved to the Denver area, Front Range, and did a variety of things over there, from nurse midwifery to quality improvement. And then wanted to come back over, so took a position as the first coordinator of the LPN to LPN to RN program at the Montrose campus of Colorado Mesa University, and did that for several years. And then was also the director of their medical office assisting program at both WCCC and at the Montrose campus. I went back for my doctorate degree at um, Frontier Nursing University in 2015, and graduated in 2016 at 60 plus years old. So I have a love of learning that it's been great to be part of education and continue to grow. I work for Western Governors University as a student mentor for a couple of years before I came on and Technical College of the Rockies and assumed this position in 2018. Um, a little bit about what brought me to the practical nursing program. I have known about the program for years. The program has a stellar reputation, and when I was the coordinator at the Montrose campus, I knew that we were getting really good LPNs into the program, and that they were strong and just had nothing but good to say about their faculty and their experience at the program there. Certainly knew about the program before that. Knew Jody Rober pretty well, and Sherry Barkley, and so all part of the nursing community. So one day I was actually having tea with a friend of mine who's from Delta, and at the Coffee Trader, and we were both looking for new things in our career. And so she mentioned to me that she had seen an ad for the director position at TCR, and I wasn't aware of that, but wanted to get more involved with the community again. So did take the position at that point. Um, and my role there has been just as director, but to say that because of the faculty shortage that we faced, I also did a fair amount of teaching and various other roles. I was also over or helped Deanna with the CNA program, very little, but because she did most of it, but did help a little with that, and then also helped get our medical office assisting program off the ground. So during my time at the practical nursing program, what were my biggest three challenges? Clearly, staffing was a huge issue. We had once the faculty that had been there before and had been there so many years retired, we had a, a continued problem having enough faculty and um, qualified faculty, or experienced. I won't say qualified because we had a lot of qualified people, but the experience with teaching, because it's different to teach than to be a nurse. So that was clearly probably the number one challenge. Clinical sites were somewhat of a challenge, but of course COVID was another huge challenge. So we were status quo, and until March of 2020, and I still remember almost the day that it happened. We were in an advisory meeting. We talked a little bit about COVID because we had gotten a notice that day from our national accreditor, ASIN, that said, "Oh, well, you can go online if you need to go online, or whatever you need to do with that." It's okay with us. You don't have to get special permission, which normally you do. So I had brought that to our advisory meeting that night thinking, well, it's still kind of off there, but we'll see what everybody else is doing with that. And that was like a Wednesday evening. And by Friday evening that week, we had lost all of our clinical sites. And because of COVID, they'd had to close their doors to students. I'd had at least one instructor call in with COVID symptoms. And so the world was turning so quickly, so rapidly, that it was the only way to keep the program going at that point was to put it online. Now, fortunately, I'd had some online teaching experience prior, so um, we were able to put the program basically on Zoom and Moodle by the Monday with a long weekend or a short weekend. So those were big challenges because we had to continue. We had to do clinicals by a virtual simulation. So that wasn't okay with the state board with the regulations pre-COVID. So we waited. We got together with Colorado Community College Systems and the Nurse Educator Association in Colorado, and we jointly filed a waiver with the state board, and that waiver had to do with being able to do simulation in lieu of clinical at 100%, and also being able to reduce program hours if that was necessary. So we waited. The state board meeting wasn't until late April, so we waited a long time for that answer. We continued on, and the program directors from Colorado Community College System met weekly during that time to try to bounce things off of each other and figure out the best way forward. So we followed what the crowd was doing with that. We did not shorten our hours, but we did do all of our remaining clinical virtually, which meant that our faculty, who it was their first year teaching, had to learn how to teach online via Zoom, lecture that way, and also had to learn how on their feet how to do the clinicals via virtual simulation. So that was a huge challenge. The second year in 20 or the that fall 2020 when the class came on, we did a hybrid model after that, and continued to have challenges that fall. We had several students out with COVID during that time. We had to go online totally a couple of times, as I remember, and clinical sites were just here and there. We would book clinical, but then they would have provider shortages or not be able to take students. Sometimes I'd get notice that morning, and so the students had to. We were doing a lot of shifting around with the schedule, and we couldn't do the long-term care facilities, which have always been the background of the program. So we were unable to do much clinical there. We were able to get a student or two in at a time, especially later in the year, but that's always been the backbone of the program. And we were using computer simulations instead of that, which I don't think gives you nearly the quality. So those were the huge challenges of my time. We were able to get the last class graduated in May of 2021, and we made the decision to go on hiatus or not take students during the 21-22 academic year, which is current, and then made a decision to notify the State Board of Closure in October of 2021. Um, and certainly the closure decision was another huge challenge, so I should talk about that too. We really did meet with the community multiple times, put together a group, a subcommittee of nurses. Most of them were either alumni here or had taught here. There were, I think, 6 of us that worked over this summer to look for all possible um, things that we might be able to do. We looked at hybrid models. We looked at all sorts of things to try to keep it going. But the reality really was the national faculty shortage and the requirement for master's prepared folks and our need for experienced people so that we could do our accreditation work. It just didn't come together. So we did make that painful decision, but the community was involved and invited to be involved with that. So those were huge challenges. My biggest successes, I think, well, hopefully this history project is a big success and that we can keep a community going on Facebook and after the event that we plan to have. And so hopefully that's a success. And I think just the positive closure of the program, and I don't mean to say that that's positive in any way, because we certainly work very hard for, I know all the directors have worked very hard to keep the program going over the years. But I think to come to a closure where everybody got graduated, where the community got to be involved, what wasn't a sudden decision that we had to make, but we were able to make that decision over time, that we were able to work with Colorado Mesa to bring an LPN program to the Montrose campus so that there would still be an LPN program here. I think all of those are successes in sort of a reverse fashion, successes from hardships. So that's what I would say with that. Um, my most positive memory from the time at the program was probably the very first graduation. We had um, the former faculty were able to come and help us put that together. At that point, we still had a fair amount of help to do that, and it was really great. And I just love the pinnings here. I used to come to the pinnings when I was working for CMU when I was the coordinator there. So I've been there, and these are probably some of the most formal pinnings that I've ever seen in my career. Very, very nice rite of passage for our students. And so that first year, we were very traditional as it had been done in the past. And everybody wore their teal, and everybody was so happy and threw their caps up in the air. And I think it was just a great moment to see them all graduate. And I've been super proud of the other classes that graduated as well. I will say that because of COVID, the ability to have that sort of a formal um, graduation ceremony was just not there. The students of 2020 elected not to have a graduation at all, and the students of 2021 had theirs outside, and it was a nice celebration. But it was very, very different than the feeling that you got with everybody in the auditorium. So that's my best memory. Hopefully we go on to make more memories through this group. So I would just add with please continue to be involved with nursing in Delta, and who knows what the future brings. Perhaps we can do scholarships or do something else with that group. So hopefully there's leadership that steps up to the plate that wants to keep um, some of the pieces that we had with the program there, even though that it's become difficult for a technical college um, to have the resources in very rural area to have the faculty credentials and pay and all of those things that go with the faculty shortage. That's just difficult. But there's some other things that I think we could do to help that mission of having students from our community go on to become nurses. And I think if there's probably enough creativity and ingenuity and kindness and all of those great strengths in this group to do that. So please get involved and tell other people who are supporters or alumni of the college to join the group. And thanks for listening.